Thanks, Brian. The health care debate could be headed back to the Supreme Court, and this time it would be challenged for religious reasons. But wasn't the law already upheld? Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano is here to help it all make sense. He's given me an education.
Presumably one can make sense out of all
of
this.
Well, because I was saying, didn't they rule on the law in its entirety, and now we can come back with these little pieces of it, and you said?
The answer to your question is basically yes. Remember, the Supreme Court in June, the outcome was a surprise to most of us who watch these things, ruled on the individual mandate that everybody have health insurance, and on the state exchanges. Congress forced the states to raise taxes and told them how to spend it. The Supreme Court weighed in on that. But this statute, Gretchen, people should remember, is 2,700 pages long. And there are many other challenges making their way through the court system to other parts of the statute. So there are 45 plaintiffs, all religious organizations, many of them Catholic, for example, the University of Notre Dame, the Archdiocese of New York, who have challenged the so-called employer mandate. The employer mandate in this statute requires employers to buy health insurance that make services available that violate the employer's values, like birth control, abortion, euthanasia. This would apply to a hospital for patients as well as employees, to a university for students as well as employees. So yesterday, the Supreme Court recognized that one of these employer mandate challenges had already made its way to a federal appellate court, and the appeals court said, we don't want to hear this. And basically, the Supreme Court said yesterday, we're about to tell the appeals court to hear this, so that it can eventually make its way to us. By doing this, the Supreme Court will be able to rule on this next year rather than 3 or 4 years from now.
But what is the messaging that you're getting from the Supreme Court that they would actually tell an appeals court below them to rule on something?
It's not unprecedented for the Supreme Court to do that. It seems unusual in this case because it's the middle of a presidential election and this is a hot topic. It tells me, just a guess, from knowing the thinking of the justices and having studied this for more years than I'd like to think, that perhaps the Supreme Court is going to come up with a different outcome this time around.
Really?
Remember, it only upheld 3 or 4 parts of the statute. There are many, many other parts that it could still look at. The First Amendment says Congress cannot interfere with the free exercise of religion. So can Congress force religious organizations that condemn abortions to pay for it? That's basically what the court will have to answer.
Well, the interesting thing is the Supreme Court not supposed to rule on how the American people feel about particular issues, but let's look anyway. The Rasmussen poll says the voter stance on the repeal of the health care law. They still want it done, Judge. 52%, 42% say, don't bother.
I'm not surprised at those numbers. I think the health care law has actually lost popularity throughout the political campaign. But it is going to require a Republican president and a Republican Congress to undo the individual mandate. If you're thinking, can the Supreme Court revisit the individual mandate? They can, but they probably won't. They usually don't look at the same issue twice, especially involving the constitutionality of an act of Congress.
But we could see more and more of these cases coming to them because there are 2,700 pages in the law.
Precisely.
All right. Very interesting.
Soon there'll be 2,700 different cases out there.
And you'll be assigned to look at every single one of them, Judge.
Unfortunately, yes.
And come on Fox and Friends and tell us about them. Thanks very much. Glad to have you on board.
My pleasure, Gretchen.